Welcome back, my fellow agents. It is I, your agent of Animated Awesome X7. And good morning, as it is now Tuesday morning because YouTube is making me completely redo last night's episode. So while the one on Spotify is very similar to this will be just a little different because it's just going to be different because it's just how it's got to be. I tried to edit it and it just kept going. It kept telling me I wouldn't be shown. So we're just going to go old school and do the pictures. And as you may have noticed, this episode is the first episode in the Marvel Superheroes television, Marvel Super TV Heroes. They did five of these, five series, 13 episodes each. Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, the Submariner, and the Hulk. All were adapted directly from the comic books with minor alterations to content, just not much, but they took the panels right out of the show. So Cap here, this is Cap from 1941. You'll notice he is wearing a helmet more than a mask, and he's got his triangular shield, and it's by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Stan the Man Lee had nothing to do with the creation of Captain America. He did write, apparently, Captain America was one of the first comic books Stan ever wrote. So, but meet Captain America, case number one. They went to actual titles after this in 1941 in Captain America comics. What we're going to look at is Cap here, the origin of Captain America from Tales of Suspense, Volume 1, 63 to 65, which is three stories, and they freely adapted them. These stories were written by according to the MarvelFandom.com wiki, it's written by Stan and Jack, pencils by Jack the King Kirby, that is. Frank Giacoya was the inker, Stan Goldberg was the colorist, Artie Simek was the letterer, and Stan, of course, was the editor as well. So Tales of Suspense had half the book was for Iron Man and half the book was for Captain America. Yeah. So they adapted the dialogue. These shows were syndicated by Grantray-Lawrence, and back then most fans called it not even limited animation, but suspended animation. Actually, now that in the 2000s and 2010s, Marvel released a bunch of what they called motion comic books, which were exactly like this, although the backgrounds were probably a little more in depth. However, you know, these stories now have gotten a bit of, I think, a relook, and more people are at least more forgiving for the kind of animation that was done, because back then they didn't have the budget and they were just kids stuff. But they're very, very authentic to the actual stories in the comic books and the art. That's Jack Kirby art being slightly animated, so you're not going to get better than that. When Captain America throws his mighty shield, all those who chose to oppose his shield must yield. It is led to a fight and a duel is due, and the right and the blue will come true. I meant to cut that off a bit more than that, but we'll just go back a little bit. Anyway, the origin of Captain America starts out World War II, of course. Animating tanks and planes was a lot easier, apparently, than people in motion because they didn't have to do that much. I think the animation is just fine. I also don't understand why I got copyright strikes or, told that I couldn't do this when maybe it's because I don't have my picture in there or something. But these cartoons are all over the place with reviews and things, and people are on how they're showing them. So go figure. This is supposed to be the president. It doesn't look a bit like Teddy, or pardon me, not Teddy, Franklin, FDR, and Dr. Anderson. And they pull up. This is right out of the comic book, and this is pretty much right out of Captain America #1 as well, though, things have been expanded upon. They're not just rushing through an origin story. That's Agent R, who I was under the impression later on was not Jeez, I want to keep wanting to say Betty Brant, and that's not who it is. Let's see. Joins Operation Rebirth, Agent R. And then I click on that, and this tells me Agent R is actually Betsy Ross, somebody related to Thunderbolt Ross, who later on became the Golden Girl because of her name. She was Cap's female sidekick in the. But you see, she's a redhead or a brunette here, and Betsy Ross is blonde. But Golden Girl was Cap's sidekick in the late 40s and maybe into the early 50s. She's an FBI agent. I really thought that was Peggy Carter there, but I could be wrong. I often am. But yeah, she's threatening him and then brings him down to Project Rebirth. There's Dr. Erskine, formerly or originally known as Dr. Reinstein, because, yeah, maybe naming people wasn't their greatest thing. And they found the perfect 4F candidate, Steve Rogers. I swear, this is also right. I mean, most of the beginning of Captain America, the first Avenger, since Namor predates him, and so does the Human Torch, and both have been Avengers. So, you know, it is what it is. Gives him a potion here. Now, in the original, they gave him an injection. And later on in Cap 109, they gave him the invisible Vita Rays. Then finally, when John Byrne and Roger McKenzie went at it, at the did probably the most definite origin, they did all three. So they brought them all together. The potion, this was to help the potion, and then the Vita Rays were to make sure he didn't go mental like the second, third, fourth Cap did in the 50s. Cap later beat. But that's a whole another story, and we'll probably go over that arc at some point in time because it's one of my favorites. He's glowing. There he is. Now there, I swear, that's one of the Chris's, the guy that was the Human Torch too. Way better as Cap. There's the enemy agent who kills Dr. Erskine and then runs. Now, in some of the comic books, Steve throws him right into the generator, but this time he runs into it and kills himself. So 2 deaths in like 5 minutes of this cartoon in the 60s. I told you, adapted right from the story, right from the comic books. And there's Cap. And he goes, and then he gets sent to Camp Lehigh, where he's under the tutelage or observation of one Mike Duffy, Sergeant Mike Duffy, who's threatening Steve with KP duty. And why is he sweating about that? I mean, can he command his sweat on cue? But so that's just the comedy bit. And that was in the president, I think in the original comics as well. The saboteurs, the fifth columners are blowing up things, and so Cap foils them. I'm so surprised they didn't get the Daily Planet, which would have been a nice touch, or the Daily Star. But the Daily Bugle should have been in there. So yeah, I mean the sound effects are more animated than anything else. Here's where Bucky, the camp mascot Bucky Orphan, finds out that just wanders into Cap's quarters in the middle of the night. Nothing questionable there at all, but Bucky's a lot younger here. James Bucky Buchanan. He says he's an orphan, and Cap says, "Well, I'll help you out." So they did invert that a bit in the movie, which I don't have a problem with because, teenage sidekicks, it's just making them hard. It's hard to make them work these days because child endangerment and all. If they had superpowers like Superboy, who was never a sidekick really, but if they had superpowers, then sure, they can go ahead and do what it is. But, this guy, Cap's just a highly trained athlete, and then Bucky is as well. There's his uniform, and I don't know which uniform is which anymore, which is the correct one. Roy Thomas certainly did. So if you want to see the correct one, read The Invaders. There's our saboteurs landing. There's their sub in the background. And the first thing they do is beat them up. This is Bucky's first assignment. And they send the explosives back and just blow up the U-boat, which kills all the people aboard, I would assume. Bucky quips, "Oh, it's so nice of you to return it." Now, let's talk about our voice actors here for just a moment, then we won't have to go over. Bernard Cohen was the narrator. Steve Rogers Captain America, Captain Torek, and Morgan. I don't know who those are. Probably will show up in other people. Carl Bonas was Bucky Barnes, and I believe we go down here. I was Billy May Richards is the newsboy, which is let's see. No, Betty Ross from the Hulk was Maxine Miller, and trying to find out. Wow, Pepper Potts, Margaret Griffin. No, let's go up here to. There we go. Vita Lender was Jane Foster, the Scarlet Witch, Sharon Carter, Peggy Carter, Lorelei, and Lady Dorma. Chances are she was Agent R because they really weren't paying a lot of attention. In the next episode, which is, let me go back down here, Cap. A Wreckers Among Us. Now, these episodes I have here I got from the Internet Archive. They're gorgeous. They have all 5 shows in their entirety, but they're all stitched together as to one, just to make one instead of 3, and have the separate introductions and the separate title cards. Once again, right out of the comic book, Sando and Omar. It's a psychic act. There's Sando, and this is Omar, looking a little bit like the gremlin from the Kremlin, who's seeing explode. He sees the things, then they explode. Star Post. Doesn't say if it's a daily Star Post, but. And Cap is there. Stevens peeling potatoes, and I don't know what Bucky's doing. He's in uniform of some kind, but. And they go to investigate Sando, and they find the villain here and an alleged lady reporter. And the Red Skull shows up. Dun dun dun. Now, the Red Skull did show up in that first episode of Cap, but they killed him in his first appearance. Then, like 2 issues later, they brought him back, and he said that was just a stand-in or something like that. Because you never saw his face for years in the comics. He could have been anyone. That was part of the mystery and the intrigue, much like the Green Goblin, but done 2 decades earlier. Sleep gas that wipes out Major Talbot. No, that's not Major Talbot. Or even a Stark. Wipes out his memory so as to slow down his progress. Another fight ensues. Bucky does the old alley-oop trick. And how fast? That's flash fast. Sorry, Bucky. You're not a superhuman. You don't even have your bionic arm yet. And the lady reporter somehow is a fighter and kicks him. More astounding special effects. She introduces herself as Agent 13. In the comic book, she's Agent X-13. We X agents have to wait. We agents that are designated with the X have to stick together, don't you know? This is still counted as Agent R, Betsy Ross, the Golden Girl. Now, that's all canonical now. It was not then. That might have been Peggy. I don't know off the top of my head because I haven't read a lot of those 40s Cap stories. Many of them, but not a lot. He lasted clean, I think, into 49 before he became the Strange Tales of Captain America. I don't know. And finally, they've defeated the saboteurs. Steve's back on peeling taters, and Sergeant Duffy slips and falls and then wonders how much the enemy agents, the Nazis, are paying Rogers to be part of our army. It's a very funny line. So, and I don't know who doesn't. I can't find his voice actor, but he does a good job. Some of the acting here is questionable. In these Thor's voice is tried to make it booming and couldn't quite get there. But the whole the acting here, except for Carl Bonas, now we don't know if that's actually him as Bucky, who sounds a little older than he looks, because Bucky should have had a high voice. If I had a girlfriend, she'd kill me. But other than that, I think the acting is quite good here. And when we eventually get to the other series, because we will, assuming that we keep this going on, we'll talk about it. So, my fellow agents, let's finish up here, the rest of this up. All those who chose
pros to oppose his shield must yield. If he's led to a fight and a duel is due, then the red and the white and the blue will come through when Captain America throws his mighty shield.
All right. So produced by Grantray-Lawrence. That they were a Canadian group. They would later do the phenomenal Spider-Man cartoon, which had better animation, though they did repeat a lot of the cycles. But it was better than this one. Although, and I don't know what this was like in the '60s. I would have loved it had I known about it. If I'd have seen it at 7 or 8 years old, when I was less, probably 6 or 7 years old, would have even been better. But when I was less discerning, I would have just thought it was great to see these actual stories animated. Some I'd probably read by then. So with that, my fellow agents, let's hope the YouTube gods will approve of this. And it is, it's very similar, except that I knew Sergeant Duffy's name this time, but it's a bit different. This is who they were distributed by, and look at this new splash page. So I just made that too. Kind of proud of it. All right, until our next assignment, this is X7 signing off.